I'm Laura London, and this is the second of two May 2025 editions of Speaking of Jung. Joining us today for episode 144 is Jungian psychoanalyst Dariane Pictet in Geneva, Switzerland. Born in Geneva, she began her college education in the United States, where she earned a degree in Comparative Religion from Columbia University in the city of New York. She then went on to Paris, where she attended drama school, and then to London, where she worked as a poetry editor at the Literary Review. While in London, Dariane earned an Advanced Diploma in Existential Psychotherapy and Counselling at Regent's College and worked in a primary care setting as an addictions counselor. She trained as a Jungian psychoanalyst at the Jung Institute Zürich, graduating with a diploma in Analytical Psychology, which is the degree of a Jungian analyst, in 2001. She is also a graduate of the Leadership Training Program of the Marion Woodman Foundation and is a facilitator of their Body Soul Rhythms affiliated workshops. Dariane spent 7 years as a visiting lecturer in the School of Psychotherapy and Counseling at Regent's University, and for 9 years worked as a training and supervising analyst on the senior faculty of the Independent Group of Analytical Psychologists in London. Since 2002, she has been working as a training analyst, seminar leader, and supervisor for the Guild of Analytical Psychologists in London, and since 2004 has been a training and supervising analyst and lecturer at the International School for Analytical Psychology, known as ISAP Zurich. She has lectured at the Ahmedabad Jung Center in India, the China Society for Analytical Psychology in Guangzhou, and lectures regularly at the Jung Club of London. Her publications include Movements of Soul in the Red Book, published in Volume 1 of Jung's Red Book for Our Time, When the Queen Dies, Psychic Incense, Grief, and the Journey of the Soul in the Alalai Rao, scheduled to be published this year in Quadrant, and She Walks Northward, The Healing of the Heart in Anderson's Snow Queen, which will be published in the February 2026 edition of Jung Journal. A trained actress, Dariane played the role of Woman in the stage performance of The Analyst and the Rabbi, written by Jungian analysts Murray Stein and Henry Abramovich, which was the subject of episode 47. And last year, she took on the role of Eranos founder Olga Fröbe-Kapteyn in Eranos, a play, also by Dr. Stein and Abramovich. Additionally, Dariane has played roles in productions of the Jung Neumann Letters and C.G. Jung The Red Book. All of this and more are the subjects of our talk today. Speaking of Jung is a listener-supported show. Please consider helping us stay on the air by contributing to our tip jar on Patreon for just $5 a month, and you will receive all of my recording notes for the featured episode of the month, or by making a one-time or recurring donation through PayPal. Donors receive the perks as well. You can find the links in the description box below or by visiting the support page on our website, speakingofjung.com. You can also help our YouTube channel grow by clicking the thumbs up on this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. It's free and it does help us get more exposure. I am also here to remind you of the importance of recording your dreams. Temenos Dream is a revolutionary dream tracking app available for iOS and Android. Now you can record your dreams by speaking into your phone or typing them into the app. Search for myths, legends, and fairy tales related to the themes in your dreams. Use the new advanced AI interpretation with a focus on Jung's work, looking closely at symbols and associations to consider shadow, anima, animus, archetypes, and much more. You can help support Speaking of Jung simply by downloading the app and creating a free account. Unlimited use is available with a premium subscription. Click on the link in the description box below or on our website, speakingofjung.com, where you will find links to everything discussed in this episode in the show notes. This video interview is being recorded on Friday, May 30th, 2025, through the magic of StreamYard. Hi, Dariane.
Hi, Laura.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. I have been wanting to do an episode with you for years, actually, ever since I saw you in the stage production of The Analyst and the Rabbi. As I mentioned in the introduction, you have a degree in existential psychotherapy, which you earned before you trained as a Jungian analyst. So I'd like to start by asking you about that type of psychotherapy and what it involves.
Well, I wanted to train as an analyst since I'm a teenager, but
Oh.
but for some reason, I started at Regent's College, which is now Regent's University, on a foundation course, and there were two routes, and one was very Freudian, which I thought
Mm.
clashed with what I would want it to do later with Jung. So I thought, okay, existential, being French speaking, everybody had, an existential crisis and read Sartre and Beauvoir and all that. So I thought it would be interesting. And it was fascinating because it's a completely different model and it really trains us into thinking, just learning how to think. And that was really exciting, actually.
Mhm.
Very different from the Jungian training. But we use phenomenology, for example, and we read a lot of philosophers, which, can be very dry. But little by little, you start to understand how that kind of thinking straight, using phenomenology can really help in the client therapist relationship. So I'm very happy I went that route.
Mhm. So you got that degree in preparation to train as an analyst?
Yes, it kind of overlapped at one point.
Mhm.
But that was the plan, to finish one and then do the other.
So you mentioned that you had wanted to become a Jungian psychoanalyst for a very long time. So where did that interest start, or how did it start?
I know I'm going to sound really weird and woo-woo, but
Not here, not here.
it started when I was about 14. I was on a date sitting in a field in the mountains behind Geneva, and this boy literally gave me a book. He says, "This is for you." And it was called Modern Man in Search of His Soul.
Mm,
And I just had this kind of moment when I got the book, and I felt I am going to be a Jungian analyst when
wow,
I just knew.
wow. And
And then
you,
I thought for a while because life takes over and you do different things,
yeah.
but I kind of always led in that direction in everything I did.
Hmm.
But I only realized that, 20 years later or something.
Okay. Okay. So you did your undergraduate work in comparative religion. So did you have that in mind when, no. So what
No,
led
again,
you?
that was an accident. I was planning to study psychology, the old
Okay.
theme. But at Barnard College at the time, it was experimental psychology, so
Right.
that's in a lab, and I went out running. And then I thought, oh, this course looks good, the grammar of religion with Theodore Gaster, who's just amazing. And then he introduced me to Eliade and to Buber and to Tillich and all these people. And it was just so exciting. And then one day my what's it called, counselor at school said, so you're majoring in religion? And I said, what? Oh, and he said, yeah, all your courses are in that department. And I thought, well, okay, let's follow that. But in the end, it was a perfect preparation for
Right.
what I was later.
Right.
But
Right.
it,
So what was your thesis from the Jung Institute on?
Winds of Homecoming.
Hmm.
Sorry, but it's a poem. It's a poem by Rilke. It's about coming home because
Mm,
um, in exile most of my life, and then going back to the Jung Institute was the first time I went back to Switzerland in a serious way after sort of 25 years or something, 20 years. So
ah,
there was a return and this sense of returning in religious speak, in mythological speak, return is, and then home is always an important theme, not just being home, but home in the world, home in yourself, home as a psychic space, all that. So that was my thesis.
Was that published anywhere?
No, because I always meant to publish it, and then other things happen, and I've never gone back to it really. So,
Sounds like that would make for a good journal article or a book.
yeah.
So as I had mentioned to you, I've been wanting to do an episode with you since I saw you in the stage production of The Analyst and the Rabbi that is now available on YouTube, the entire play, not just the audio, but the stage performance. And I did an episode with the writers, Murray Stein and Henry Abramovich, about that. I believe it's episode 47. And I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about your participation in that. You played the role of a woman, and it's kind of like you are the narrator of, I have a photo here. I want to make sure I get the right one. There you are. Would you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, it was really powerful because actually, Murray calls it woman, but I really felt it was anima. These men were really fighting, and they had things to say to each other, but they were a little bit stuck in their egos, and they just wouldn't do it. And that's what a woman does. She keeps whispering in one ear and whispering in another in an effort to facilitate a dialogue between these two.
So when you say these two, just for the audience who might not be aware, the man on
Leo Beck.
The man on the left is Rabbi Leo Beck, and on the right is Jung.
Yeah. Yeah, and they criticized each other for different positions that they had taken or not taken. And so the point of the play is to really, we know that this meeting did take place. It's historically true. And we know that after this meeting, they got along better. Before, they were quite critical of each other. So I really felt that the part was to facilitate that, to bring them together, bring them to some kind of resolution. And so that demanded for me, I had not a lot of speaking of lines, but I was always in the background. Here I'm forward in this photo, but then I would just step back behind and then they'd get on with it. And then I'd come back in to say, come on, you wanted to talk more about this, or are you really, what are you trying to say now? And so I had to be very, very still. I really had to embody some kind of still point and be very present so that these two could feel supported and contained, and going through whatever psychology they needed to get out of where they were and meet the other. And it's a funny thing that we staged this play also not very far from here once, and my sister came to see it. And then she, after the play, she came to me and she said, oh, my God, your presence was amazing. I wish you were more like that in life. But it is about, embodying this archetypal energy that is really powerful. It's like, just hold it hold the space for somebody.
That's a beautiful description of that role that you played. You did have a very powerful presence. You were in the center a lot, in between the two. So, which actually is now, I'll bring in something that I mentioned in the introduction, which is your essay in volume 1 of Jung's Red Book for Our Time. I also did an episode about that series with Murray Stein and the late Thomas Arst, who were the editors of the series. And Thomas Arst passed away in 2020, I believe. But I did an episode with them and the publisher, Dr. Stephen Buser, and one of the contributors to Volume 1, Dr. Lance Owens. Your essay is brilliant. People ask me a lot about books and what should I read and about this topic, that topic. Your essay is about the anima, and I will, from now on, point people to this. I'm just scrolling here looking for the exact name of the essay, Movements of Soul in the Red Book. Would you tell us a little bit about that essay?
Well, you know, that essay came before the play that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
About holding presence, but it was still, it came out of a play that we did called The Red Book. We actually, 7 scenes from The Red Book. And I played soul in various disguise throughout the play. And we were very involved in the Red Book. It was the beginning of the Red Book, and we really wanted to make it accessible. And so we put up this play that some people liked and others didn't. But it really gave me a sense of Jung's journey with soul.
Yeah.
You know, he says, "Where are you? You've disappeared." And then she appears, and then they have this difficult relationship, and then at the end they kind of walk off in the sunset together. So rehearsing and performing this play took about 2 years, because we took it, or 3 years,
Wow.
to different congresses and many, many different countries. And we always had to rehearse in between. So I had a really good embodied sense of soul, and she's really interesting and funny and all sorts of things in the Red Book. I mean, one of my favorite lines is at the very beginning. So she appears and Jung says, "Oh, good, you're here. So now, you know, I've had a really difficult life and all this and all this and all this." And she just turns around and says, "Oh, you speak to me like a child speaks to his mother. I'm not your mother."
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with, you know, very a woman, you know,
Yeah.
soul is not up there. She's a woman who's
Yeah.
saying, "Speak to me. I'm here. Look at me. You've ignored me forever, and now you're moaning and you want me to lead your life. No, first, you have to consider me. I have to exist for you." So all that gave me a sense of, again, quite physical. Of course, I had to read and research Soul in the Red Book to write my essay. But it gave me a good sense of all the different ways that she existed for Jung. And so, of course, Jung is very famous for his development of the anima,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what I tried to show in the essay, because there are movements. He moves from one stage of relationship with her to another. I mean, according to his theory, there are 4 stages of development of the anima. And so that's what I tried to trace in that essay.
Yeah, it's wonderfully written, very explanatory. And it just brought me back to this book series. There are 5 volumes now of Jung's Red Book for our time, because the Red Book is, I mean, it's such a complex, multi-layered piece of work. And to have Jungian analysts and scholars write these essays, their take on parts of the Red Book, their own take on different aspects of it is great. It's a great resource to help us understand the Red Book. So I want to thank you for that and highly encourage everybody to read that essay. There will be a link to it in the show notes. So you guys performed that. That was before I even started the podcast. I don't know, is that recorded anywhere?
No,
I don't think so, right?
no, I don't think so. The photos, I mean, we took it to China. I know that they took a lot of photos there. It was a beautiful performance. We were in an immense hall, you know, with 500, 600 people. And they had a little bit like at the Royal Opera in London. They had the photo of the speaker and then the Chinese
Oh,
on the sides of the stage as
wow.
speaking. I mean, it was an incredible experience.
Is this photo from the Red
No,
Book?
that
No.
yeah, this is from the Red Book, but this
Yes.
is an early. It's not the Chinese. This is
Mm.
an early. Yeah, there's Murray, who's the narrator in the background, and Paul, who's Jung, Paul Bruce, and it's the first scene when she appears, and he's there going, "Oh, I'm lost myself. I'm 37. I'm empty inside, etc. What shall I do now with my life?" And that's when she just appears, and she starts to listen, and then they have the first dialogue, which is the first dialogue of the Red Book, and. I was very lucky to be involved with the Red Book from the very beginning because Sonu Shamdasani had a small group, even before it was published, it was before it was published, the first meeting. And then for 7 or 8 years, we read it together in his house in London. Once a month, we met for these Red Book seminars for a long, long time. So we
Did
went through
you?
it very, very slowly.
Ah, I didn't know about that. That was before it was
Mm.
published.
It was at the cusp of the
Yeah,
beginning, the whole process of having it published. And then also, nobody expected how successful it would be.
right. Right. And just for context, it was published at the end of 2009. Is that correct? I believe
I
so.
don't know.
Yeah, I believe it was in the fall of
I don't know.
2009 because I remember attending um,
It
a.
was presented at one IAP conference.
So we also are here to talk about the new play that you were in about Eranos. And you played the figure of the founder of Eranos, Olga Frobe. We were talking about the pronunciation of her last name, Fröbe-Kapteyn. Murray Stein and Henry Abramovich wrote a play called Eranos to describe, yes, the founding, right, of the Eranos, the place, the conference, and what it's about. And they wrote the character of Olga Fröbe-Kapteyn with you in mind, didn't they? So
Apparently, yeah.
apparently that's what they say, and that you wrote an essay for that book, that published book that you just held up, Eranos, a play, called Meditations on Olga. And I have a lot of notes here from it. It's wonderfully written, but I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about what you know about Olga and the research that you did to play her.
Well, I really did the research. Well, first, we started to rehearse the play as we always do, and it's always a kind of ensemble kind of work. So we can make comments about our part and maybe, change this or change that if it doesn't feel right. So it's always very collaborative until they get to the final version. So I got very interested in her from the start, but not knowing anything except founder of Eranos. But I had this kind of feeling she served tea and, welcomed the guests, Jung's guests. And this, a completely wrong picture about her. And
Mm,
as um, as I start to read the part, I realize there's so much more to her. And in discussions with Murray and Henry and the others, I realize that she's the founder of ARIS. I realize that she edited all the yearbooks, which I have and read and I've had for years, and that she chose the guests, that she founded Eranos and not Jung, that
mm,
for the name, that she has a whole life that leads up to this point, and then it becomes one of her, this and Aras becomes really her life purpose. But she's so complex and so extraordinary. And then when I started to write the essay for the book that goes in the play, then I really wanted to go even deeper. And then there's not a lot around, actually. So it's really Riccardo Bernardini and Giovanni Sorge. They published 2 essays on her. And in fact, Dr. Bernardini, will be presenting her blue books
Yes.
next Zurich lecture. So little by little, it's like opening one of those, you know, Russian dolls. I mean, there's more and more and more. And then just yesterday, I found out she was an incredible equestrian. She was a
Oh.
superb tennis player. I mean, what did this woman not do well? It's
Mm.
and I think she's very much one of these women that we're rediscovering today. In the history of the last century, women were edited, and then we discovering like Hilda auf Klimt and people like this,
Yeah.
and guys, her art is amazing.
Hmm.
All her art is amazing. It's going to be in several shows this year and next year, and her blue books are paintings, and I think also written diaries, something akin to Jung's Red Books. I can't wait to read it. They're unpublished diaries that I'm waiting to hope that they'll be translated into English and published one of these days. I mean, she's extraordinary.
Hmm. So you mentioned that she founded Eranos and not Jung. Jung attended many of the Eranos conferences. So for the people who are not familiar with Eranos, and I'm sure you've been there, would you tell us a little bit about the place and the conferences?
I haven't been to Eranos. I was
Ah,
supposed to go last summer. No, I mean for years, but again, Eranos is quite far from where I live, and a lot further when I lived in London, which was most of my life. So no, I haven't been. I have a sense of what it looks like because Lake Geneva, Lake Maggiore, mountains, Blue Lake. I have a real sense of the area.
so
But
it's in a different part of Switzerland from where you
yes,
are. It's
yes.
in the eastern part near, is that right?
Near Italy.
Near
It's
Italy.
on the Lake Maggiore, and it's a little in a little town called Ascona, which was very, very famous in the turn of the century in the 1920s. It was a bit the progressive California of Europe, where there were sanatoriums for the, straight-laced ladies, Victorian ladies who were passing out all the time, and there they could run free and naked, and they had communities, and they had Isadora Duncan used to dance there. Everybody went to Ascona.
Hmm.
It was quite a progressive place for self-discovery. And then that's where she went with her father, and she completely fell in love. She just lost her daughter, no, not her daughter yet, but her husband. And so her father took her there and then gave her a house, and that's became the house where she lived the rest of her life and where Eranos conferences took place.
Hmm. And she had kind of a tragic life in that her husband died early in a
He
plane
died
crash.
early after 5 or 6 years in a plane crash. She had 2 daughters, 2 twin daughters, and one of them was sent to Germany because it was thought she'd have better treatment there, and she was murdered by the Nazis.
Hmm.
So by the time she arrived I mean, this is my understanding. This is not scholarly notes, but this is more intuitive. But by the time she went to Casa Gabriela and moved there, she went into a big period of introversion, probably grief. And she started to study yoga very, very deeply and all of Hindu mysticism and Hindu yoga texts for years, for 6 or 7 years. And I think at some point she went to consult Jung. And that's when he said, and she talked about wanting to make a conference. She'd already attended, I think Counselling had a salon not very far in the same area. She had already been involved with a lot of people who had intellectual conferences and retreats.
Hmm.
And I think Jung gave her the impulse and said make it a meeting of East and West.
Mm.
And that was very important to her because of her interest in Hinduism and Eastern mysticism.
Hmm. And so she did, and she started these conferences, and she would invite. How do you think she met Jung initially?
I don't know. I mean, Jung was very, very famous
Okay.
in those days. He was the man you consult if you're not feeling well. And I
Mm,
and I think there's a line in the play that says that at some point she was meditating so much and doing yoga so deeply and so introverted and not seeing anyone, she thought she was losing her mind.
yeah.
So I think that's the phone call you make in those days. You ask for an appointment with Dr. Jung, and she was probably very well connected and was able to be introduced to him.
Hmm. And she was an artist, among other things. And I thought it was interesting in your essay that you wrote, Olga said, Jung hated my paintings.
Yeah,
He
he did.
told me to take them down. I did, and that hurt. He called it the devil's work. Would you say a little bit more about that? I was stunned to read that.
You know, I think it's all about Jung, quite frankly, because he
Hmm.
also had done the Red Book and had decided not to publish and was worried about this enormous attraction he had to art and to being an artist. And I think he thought that that would take him away from his main project, is to describe the soul psychologically. But this is a picture of one of her. I don't know if you can see it, but they're very abstract and
Hmm.
1930s, 1940s. And, it's the beginning of abstract paintings. There was, as I said before, Hema of Klimt, but they erased her and thought, and I talked about, oh, what's the name of the artist? Kandinsky. You know,
Yes.
so it wasn't feminine and pretty. It was very
Right.
geometric, and she was trying to describe. They were like mandalas, really, but and not that far from what some of the things Jung was painting in the Red Book. But she was trying to describe these inner states,
Hmm.
and she really tried hard. And those are the first. I think they were called meditations. There's a series called Meditation and a series called Visions. Anyway, it's the first series that she had in the house in Eranos, and Jung told her to take them down.
Mm.
And- But she was quite a feisty character. She was not a little mouse. So eventually they came back and she continued to paint. And then she did the meditation series. So it didn't stop her. It did hurt and it's maybe stopped her for a while, but she was so busy doing other things.
Yeah.
But she did go back to it.
Hmm.
And Jung was very direct, he was not what we would call a feely carrying type of therapist in today's world. He would say things as he felt them.
Mm-hmm. So I did find online that a museum in Locarno, Switzerland, did exhibit Olga's work starting last August until January of this year. And they call her one of the pioneers of abstract art in the early 20th century. I will provide a link to the webpage in the show notes because these meditation plates, they have a lot of them right there on their website. And I'll actually drop some into the edited video here. And that brings me to Aras, which she founded. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
We all know ARIS. It's the resource for archetypal images that is
Hmm.
now and a lot of unions use it and other people. And so, and they're beautiful books also produced on this database. But what I hadn't realized is she created this database.
Hmm.
She at Eranos, she she wanted to do a dictionary, Pictionary of the soul. She wanted all these images. And she went from museum to museum all through Europe, asking for these images of ancient goddesses and different incarnations of soul, the early Neolithic, I mean, anything that felt like it was a representation of the soul. And so she had an immense collection of these, and she showed them to Eric Neumann, who said, "Wow, this is really impressive." And she said, "Well, I'm going to write a book. Would you like to introduce it for me?" And she said, "Sure, I'd be very honored." And it turns out that he wrote the book, The Great Mother, probably inspired by some of the images that she had gathered. And so she really felt that this was a very important thing to have this resource of images, this map of the soul in images. And then it became eventually, it's in the Walbrook, the originals are in the Walbrook Connection in London, I think, but, and the rest is in Princeton or somewhere. But it's available to anyone through the ARAS website.
And in your essay on Olga, you write that she said, "It is such a challenge to depict spiritual ideas visually." I really like the way you said that.
I think that's what she was trying to do with her art.
And that she was never comfortable with a rational outlook on life. Theosophy was her first love, bringing the invisible realm she sensed so clearly that little bit closer. So
I think that was very important. And Eranos was always meant to be a project not for scholars and intellectuals, although they were all scholars and intellectuals, but she wanted a real wisdom place where you learn things that would help you to connect, with your inner world and the inner. It wasn't just to learn how, other people thought or felt about God or the sacred. Yes, there was that in Zimmer and in all the guests that she invited, but she really wanted something that was more felt, I think.
And she said, "Harmony settles me." Just that's so simple, but it's just so true. And I find that with myself, a harmony in things, and that she made the lemonade and picked mint from the garden and for the attendees, right? And the oranges.
Okay, that's my imagination.
That's your imagination. And that
I really don't know, because my piece is really what happens just before they arrive. And the play, my part in the play starts that way. What if nobody comes? So Olga is just sitting there going, do I have everything ready? And there's going to be 2 weeks of these towering personalities all over the house. And we all know as women that even if you're hosting, an extraordinary conference, you still have to worry about, fruit and drink and
ironing the napkins.
Yeah. And so that's my imagination. But I could imagine that, everything had to work perfectly. Again, a container. Because she didn't speak at Eranos much. I think she once or twice, but I could be wrong. But I think she created the space for this magic to happen, that everybody wanted to be invited, who was somebody in the spiritual world, wanted to be invited and meet other people and this, compare different religions, compare different states of mind, compare consciousness, east-west. That's what was so unique about Eranos.
At a round table.
At the round table.
A round table. And she said that Jung would always pull up a stool for her, that she didn't want to sit at the table, but he would always pull up a stool for her.
Yeah.
I found interesting.
Yes. She's a mixture. I always thought she was really introverted. And then when I started to research her, she wasn't. She was a go-getter, very extroverted, had tons of friends, moved around the world. But I think something happened that when her husband died and then her daughter, something happened that created this need for profound introversion. And She really went in, and when an extrovert goes in, they really go in. She
Mm.
out. So I imagine her as being very bubbly and sociable and able to bring together people, which an introvert wouldn't be very good at. So
Mm.
has that, but then she has the depth.
Mhm. Mhm. And going back to the images and auras, she said, or you said, I don't know, images lead to transformation. Our disease, our symptoms, our unconscious symbols moving through the body. So let's bring in your work with the body. And I said in the introduction that you went through the leadership training program with the Marion Woodman Foundation.
Well,
Tell
with
us a little
Marion
with
and
Marion.
oh yes, for 10 years, more or less. Marion came to Europe, started, well, she came before that. The first workshop I did with her was in 1990. But in 96, she set up a women's group and then decided to turn that into a training. So from 96 or 97, we met every year for 1 week
Mm.
in Cornwall. And it was amazing. I mean, we had Marion sitting there with us. There's about 20 of us, Marion, Mariana, and we did this whole journey of body soul work.
And what was involved in the body soul work? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Marion is the one who did mediate Jung for women in a sense.
Yes.
Bring Jung to a felt sense, to translating that through her own amazing skills at storytelling and
Mm.
dream interpretation. And so with all, and journaling and taking the body and the voice seriously, that was really her thing. And this was happening as I was training in psychotherapy and as I was training later in Jungian psychology. So for me, she was instrumental, and we had a very profound and fiery relationship.
Oh, did you?
I Yeah, we did. I hosted her in my office in London. I organized the first Nietzsche seminars in London for her, the first two or three, I think. Yeah, we had a very, very strong bond. And then it ended with her giving a conference with the body soul work for ISAP analysts, only for analysts. And that
Okay.
was 206 or 207 with Judith Harris, Marion, and myself. First, she did a lecture, and then we did this famous dance of three, which is one of her embodied a dance to show us how psyche works in action, in movement. So we did that together in Zurich, and that was the last time I saw her. It was very moving.
Mm. And she passed away not that long ago. And she lived in Canada, right?
She lived in Canada, yeah.
Mhm. So I told this story several times on the podcast, but I just want to mention it here briefly, that her book, Addiction to Perfection, was the first Jungian book I read. And the first time I picked it up, I didn't understand any of it. So I had to put it down for several years before I could pick it up again, and then just kind of memorized a lot of it. And I was at the Jung Center in Chicago, and I was standing with several other women who I didn't even know. And that the topic of that book came up, and I said that something like that, that's the best Jungian book I've ever read. And that book changed my life. And all of them nodded and said, same with them. Because back then, so maybe, I don't know when I picked it up 30 years ago, I wasn't reading Jung yet and couldn't understand Jung, and I could understand that. And I like what you said about her bringing Jung to women.
Yeah, for me, it was the pregnant virgin. I mean, I read The
Ah,
Pregnant Virgin, and my heart just kind of broke, and I could feel it fall on the floor.
wow.
She gave you the feeling of knowing you so intimately,
Yes.
as if she could see you.
Mhm.
And that is a very healing and powerful experience, even through the books.
Yeah.
But also when you're, walking in the moor with her, she had this way of being totally present with you. Um, and then she was an immense storyteller.
Mhm.
Morning we started with a story. She'd either tell us a myth or go through a dream. Somebody would bring a dream, and then she'd amplify it with myth and story and poetry and Emily Dickinson and Rumi and Rilke, and then we'd dance, and then she'd speak some more. It was really wonderful.
So this body soul rhythm affiliated workshops, are they still ongoing?
No, I did them at the very beginning. I haven't done any for 15 years. We did them at the very beginning of that of these workshops. It was, oh, I can't remember, in 2002, 2003, we did Demeter workshops for about, yeah, we did about seven, for about 6, 7 years or something.
Mhm.
So we did attempts, at doing the kind of work Marion was doing with us for other women in London,
Mhm.
using myth and dream interpretation and
Okay.
movement and painting art. We didn't have a voice person like Anne Skinner, but we had a movement. I had a movement colleague and a painting, Ama and Sue Kuhn and Ama Pai.
Mhm.
Led these workshops for many years, and then other things happened. And yeah,
There
I haven't
there
done
are
them since.
others that are conducting these workshops now?
So there are many, many people who are doing these workshops, and there's a big resource if you go to the Marion Woodman Foundation site. And then you can get that newsletter and find a workshop near you. Yeah.
Okay, great.
And they've
I'll
all been trained, I think. Everybody's been trained by Marion, Mary, and Anne.
That's wonderful that you did that and that you knew her. She such a profound influence on so many of us.
Mm.
So, getting back to Olga, I did find that there is a book. Trying to understand if it's been published, this blue book of hers. Do you know?
No, the Blue Book is the series of paintings,
Yes.
and it's going to be presented by Bernardini, Dr. Bernardini at the Zurich lectures. So he's working on them as we speak. They will be published, like every book that is presented at the Zurich lectures by Chiron, I think. But that will be the presentation of his work on the Blue Books.
So, when you say the Zurich lectures, what exactly?
There, the Zurich lectures are an ISAP event in October
Ah,
every
yes,
year,
yes.
started by Murray Stein, where an author is given a year to present a work, and then the book is to work on his book, and then it's published.
And so that will be this year?
Yep, this October.
Ah, this October. Okay. I'm just going through these notes here a little bit to see if there's anything else you wanted to mention about Olga. I do have some photos here of the stage performance. This is you playing Olga, right? Where is this?
This is at the Jungian Odyssey last year. I think it was last year or the year before. I can't remember now. Maybe
And mhm.
the Odyssey is a retreat that ISAP does every year, and people invited all the to present. And for a week, people are given all sorts of Jungian resources, and it's really an amazing retreat.
Yeah, a previous guest that I had, Shireen Vishmaya, she just attended this year's and she wanted me to go with her, but I couldn't. And she was posting photos on Instagram, and it just looked. I was stunned at the richness and the beauty and the just the images. Shireen does a great job of that on Instagram. So she was sharing from the lectures and just from the surroundings. So here,
It was very beautiful. I was there this year as well, giving
you
a
were
lecture.
there.
Yeah, it's really something that if anybody wants to know about Jung, learn about Jung, train or not train, they can go to the Jungian Odyssey for 1 week and meet all the ISAP analysts.
Ah,
Keynote speakers going to come that are not necessarily from ISAP, and then there'll be theater and there'll be excursions and visit to Jung's house and all sorts of things.
mhm.
It's really a good program.
And it's every year in the spring?
Every year, last week of May usually.
Ah, okay. Okay, I'll look forward to attending that sometime. And then I do have another photo of you playing Olga. This one. So that is Jung in the background. Is that Paul?
Yes, and Aniela Jaffe,
Catherine?
Catherine, and yeah, that's what it is.
Mhm.
This was
And
supposed to be the round table.
right, right. So this play, Eranos, a play, I don't think that the stage performance was filmed and is available yet online. Hopefully
It
it will
wasn't
be.
film. We decided to do a podcast instead, and the podcast is available online.
It's on YouTube. Yes, the
Yeah.
audio, and I'll provide a link to that in the show notes.
We didn't talk about the Great Mother because she was inhabited by mystical experiences and visions that she had of the Great Mother. So for her, all this was not just an intellectual adventure. It was connected profoundly to who she was. She felt she was guided by the Great Mother and that she had visions of her. And
Yes.
it's probably through her that she felt that she healed from her difficult tragedies and trauma. But so she had a very live spirituality. That was something I thought it would be important to mention. Not only did she paint, did she edit, very, very scholarly conferences, but she also had a profound religious spiritual practice. And she was a yogi as well.
Another quote from your essay: I could not rest until the phenomena of the unconscious in its various forms of written descriptions, fantasies, or drawings could be studied, compared, interpreted, ordered, or classified by competent workers in the field of psychology. So she took these visions seriously. She took her art seriously, her practice, and it was not a common thing for women to be doing back then, was it?
No, I can't stress enough how exceptional she was. She had gone to Zurich Design School. She made her own clothes.
Mm.
She was very stylish. I don't know what this woman couldn't do. She was so developed, so individuated in a sense.
Mm.
I think she's somebody that we should get to know better. And I'm hoping that there'll be a biography or a movie or something
Mm.
to describe what an extraordinary person she was. And I'm just, beginning to know a little bit about her.
You're right. Since archetypes do not require food or sleep, I too could not get proper rest and nourishment. And this really struck me because I could relate. Collecting images is also part of my individuation process, like my paintings, collecting images. I've been doing that since I was a child and didn't understand why. So I appreciated reading that. And she said, I speak in symbols now, like Jung. I love that too.
Metaphor, symbol, that Marion always say, the metaphor is the language of the soul.
Mm,
Yes, because there's so much paradox that only poetic images and symbols can really express how reality can be this and that at the same.
mhm. So the book, Eranos, a Play, also contains other essays by analysts. And I spoke with Luis Morris a few episodes ago about his essay. And there's a lot in this little book, in this little paperback book. There's a lot in there. Just scrolling through here to see. I see that here in Chicago, at the Art Institute of Chicago, they do have some screen prints of Olga's, but they're not on display because I was going to go there to look at them. They're not currently on display. There's also a very long article in the Public Domain Review, Images from the Collective Unconscious, Olga Fröbe-Kapteyn. I'll never get that right. And the Eranos Archive. A very long article with images. I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. So thank you, Dariane, for bringing Olga to life again, really, and a movie. That's a great idea, and I hope that they give you a call for that to play Olga. That would be wonderful to see. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today to talk about her. And we look forward to the publication of her Blue Book.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. Thank you, Laura.
Speaking of Jung is not just a podcast, it is also a website. Please visit speakingofjung.com, where you will find extensive information on the life and work of C.G. Jung, show notes, and audio downloads for all of our 166 episodes, a comprehensive books page, a blog, and now a monthly email newsletter, which you can sign up for at the bottom of our front page. All of our episodes are also available on YouTube podcasts, which you can access by subscribing to this channel, Jungian Laura. It's free. Just click the subscribe button below. I created Speaking of Jung almost 10 years ago. This year is our 10th anniversary, and all of our content is still free to access, but it is not free to produce. Please consider contributing to our tip jar on Patreon for just $5 a month, or visit the support page at speakingofjung.com/support for links on all the ways you can help keep this podcast and our website alive. So with special thanks to Patricia Preisner, to Chiron Publications, to Charlie Arthur, and to each and every one of our Patreon members and donors, I am Laura London, and you've been watching the play of Speaking of Jung.